This video will show you how to replace the rear coil springs on a Mazda 3. This is part of your rear suspension, located behind your rear wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Safely raise and support the rear of the vehicle so your wheel's off the ground. Once you've completed that, you're going to remove all 5 of your 21mm lug nuts and that wheel. Now that we have the wheel off, we can see under this area. We see our lower control arm and our rear coil spring. To remove this rear coil spring, we're going to have to start dislodging some hardware. Along the outboard side here, just behind the rear brakes, we're going to loosen this bolt, but leave it in a couple threads, and we'll continue on towards our sway bar link, and then eventually to the inboard bolt on the subframe. I'm using a 17mm to loosen my mounting bolt. We do not need to fully remove it. On the opposite side of this, you're going to find that you have a captured mounting nut. You don't have to worry about that. I'm just mentioning it so you know what's over there. Now looking at the sway bar link, we're going to start by dislodging this lower piece of hardware, and we'll continue on towards the inboard side of the control arm. As far as the sway bar link mounting hardware, this can come in all different shapes and sizes. On my application, I'm using an 18mm to hold the shaft of my sway bar link on the inboard side here where my boot is. I don't want to cause any damage. Also on the outboard side here, I have a mounting nut. It's a 15mm, so I'm going to remove that. We're going to slide this out of place. Now once I have that loose, I'm going to start it back on a couple threads, and we'll leave this sway bar link in place. Let's get my wrench on here. Plenty of movement there. Now we're all the way on the inboard side here of the control arm, where it connects to the subframe. In this area, we can see our cam adjustment mounting bolt. Now this is part of your alignment. For this, we want to make sure we mark it prior to disassembling. This is going to be the area that we're going to pivot the lower control arm, so we really only need to loosen this enough that we can do so. For this, I'm using a 17mm for either side. I have a 17mm wrench. I'm going to be using this on the forward side, which is the bolt head. 17mm for this mounting nut. Now at this point, all the hardware is still in place but loose. We're on the outboard side again. We can fully remove this mounting bolt. Once we have this out, we're making our way back to that sway bar link. As we dislodge that, we're holding onto the control arm so we can safely lower it down and remove that coil spring. Before we start removing any of that, let's make sure we apply upward support underneath our lower control arm. We don't need to lift anything very high, we just want to support this so we can continue on with our hardware. We're making our way to the rear sway bar link next. Slide that out of there. Now we're ready to start lowering this down to remove that coil spring. This inboard bolt is the pivot bolt, so this is just going to tip down. Just be extremely careful this does not fall out as you continue on. You can see it separating here. We're being aware of any pinch points. We do not want to get hurt in any way. Take your time. We're releasing pressure from that coil spring. Once you feel as though you can remove it, go ahead and pause on lowering the control arm and remove that coil spring. Up along the top of this coil spring, typically there's going to be a rubber mount. This could be attached to the vehicle, or it might be on your coil spring. If it's on the spring, go ahead and remove it. Now, of course, we do need to make sure we clean and inspect the mounting areas. Make sure there's no miscellaneous debris up along the top of this area, which may hinder the ability of that coil spring. Now that I've wiped that, looking inside this area, typically you're going to find a lower mount as well. We like to remove that. You want to give it a thorough inspection and make sure it's not damaged. This right here really isn't a big deal. We want to pay attention to this rubber portion making its way all the way around. Confirm it doesn't look like it's squished, ripped, or damaged in any way. Aside from that, you want to pay attention along here. You can see exactly where the very bottom of that coil spring is going to sit. It needs to tuck right in against this corner. How do we know where this sits? We have alignment tabs. Those tabs sit along the ports along the bottom of our rear control arm. We'll just give this a quick wipe. You should be able to see the tabs fit through once you have it in the proper placement. Typically there is 2 of these tabs. One of ours is broken. I'm not worried about that. We're just going to get this aligned with its small slot on the bottom here. The other tab should fit through right about here. And now it's time to install that rear coil spring. If you were looking at the upper mount, typically you're going to be able to see exactly where the end of the original coil spring was sitting. I like to try to align that. Now I'm going to take this entire thing, I'm going to bring it up towards the body of the vehicle. We have our upper mounting point right up here. This is where that rubber mount's going to sit. We'll align the bottom area. You know exactly where the bottom of that coil spring needs to be. Once we have it aligned, we're going to continue on pressing this up so we can start installing our outer bolt. Now, if you move the support from under the control arm, you can pivot it down. We'll continue on with that spring. We're going to bring this up. We're aligning the very end of the spring with its alignment point, and then of course we have the top. Now I have the end of the spring approximately right along this area, which is where it needs to be. We're aligning the top area and applying upward pressure so we can install our mounting bolt through this area. Slow and steady. We've cleaned our threads. I've applied blue thread locker. Let's get this bolt in place. We're going to start it in by hand. We're leaving it loose at this point. Move things around as necessary. In some instances, you may need to pivot the control arm one direction or the other. That's going to change the angle of the bolt so you can align it with the opposite side. To pivot this control arm, you can either use a pry bar or an awl if necessary. Just want to make your way through one of the ports, and you should be able to go one direction or the other. Just be extremely careful. Once we have that started in, we'll move along. Now, as far as this outer bolt, once you have it started in, we're going to raise this up to ride height position so we can continue on tightening and torquing as necessary. Snug this up. Now, once I have that bottomed out, I'm going to torque it to 60 foot-pounds. Let's continue on to the inboard piece of mounting hardware. This mounting nut I'm also going to torque to 60 foot-pounds. Now at this point, you can either raise or lower the suspension as needed for that sway bar link. We'll slide it through and start on the mounting nut. Now that I have that snug, I'm going to torque it to 30 foot-pounds. Remove support from under the control arm and we'll make our way out from under the vehicle. Let's get ready to install that wheel. Start on all 5 of your 21mm lug nuts. We'll bottom them out, get the wheel safely on the ground, and then we're going to torque each of these to 100 foot-pounds. We've got the wheel back on the ground. We'll be torquing each of our lug nuts in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Okay, friend, we showed you how to install one side of your vehicle's rear coil springs. When you do these, typically you do them as a pair. The process for one side of the vehicle is the same as the other. Once you've completed that, take your vehicle for a road test down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.